Morning, good afternoon, good evening, boys and girls. This is the lab. Let's go over it. Lab is Nat Dhcp Ntp Ssh Lab 23. This is very similar to one that we have previously done with a little bit of some exceptions and changes. So let's start working on it. So this is the instructions. These are the instructions. IP connectivity between three routers is established. IP service must be configured in order to the presented order to complete the implementation. So we have to configure NAT services over here and a standard access list, an ACL. We have to configure, avoiding the MVI, of course, DHCP services, NTP services, and SSH services. Is the same instructions as the other lab, but we have a little bit of changes. Oh, so let's work on it. Let's work on it. First, let's go to router 2. Let's try to figure out what router 2 is. I'm going to minimize the screen and we're going to work to complete the configuration in router 2. It's exactly the same configuration that we did in the other lab, but there is a few changes. So enable config T. IP access lists. We have a standard, and then the name of this ACL is xlate. So it changes a little bit. Now we are in router 2 and we are going to permit some networks. First, the next hop IP address of 10.2.3.3. That will be this specific interface. Then we need to permit D192, then 168.3.1. That is the loopback IP address of router 3. And at the end, permit 10.1.3.11. Actually, remember this one has a little bit of a problem there in the diagram. So it's actually 11 instead of 2. And we will be doing the IP DHCP configuration in gigabit 0/2 on router 3 later on. We have to do an exit here and interface gigabit 01. IP NAT inside. Remember, this was the inside. And now we have to do interface gigabit 00. IP NAT outside. Let's start with the changes that we have here after doing the exit. The way we are going to do this one is we're not using the overload as before. We are doing IP NAT pull. We are doing a pull. Test pull. Let's validate that they requested this test pull to be configured. Some point they should be telling us that. They didn't say that. Oh yes, test pool. There it is. We need to configure that. The IP address that we are going to use here is the 10.10.10.1. 10.10.10.1. Do you see where is that IP address? 10.10.10.1. Is there a loopback or something like that? I don't see yet. They gave us this. Oh, they give us this network. So this is the one that we need to use. 10.10.10.0/24. So that's where that network comes from. And after doing the subnetting, the last IP address available is 10.10.10.254. Net mask of 255.255.255.0. Okay, now let's do the following. Let's go ahead and apply this access list with the command ipnat inside source list xlate pool test underscore pool and exit. Now we are still in router 2. It looks like we we need to do something here in router 2. We need to configure the NTP server in router 2. If we are running this command, the NTP server, it means that they requested the router 2 as a client. So that's the reason, because router 2 has to have that IP address. How do we know router 1 interface that needs to be configured is the 10.1.2.0, Ethernet 0/0. They did that request somewhere. Yeah, 10.1.2.1 is actually this IP address for the NTP master, or the NTP server with all of the services. But we run this NTP server in router 2 because that will be the client that we are configuring. So let's go to router 2 and do that. Let's go ahead and type the following: NTP server 10.1.2.1 config t NTP server 10, and remember the IP address is 10.1.2.1. That is the correct one. After doing an end, we can do a W write to save the changes, and we can start doing some testing here. Let's go to router 3 so we can do some test. Okay, we are going to do a ping test. The following IP address: 192.168.100.1. We might be losing a couple of packets the first time, but the second time it worked perfectly. Nice, 100% of success here. Now we have to go and stay here in router 3 because we need to configure that gigabit 02, represented here by Ethernet 02. This IP address is the one that is incorrect because we have to create it via DHCP. So let's do the following. We don't have to do any excluded IP addresses. Yeah, mainly because we already configured the pool here, so we don't really have to do much. The only thing we need to do right now is config t, then interface gigabit 02. Then we have to do IP address, DHCP, exit. And we got the IP addresses there. Nice. Let's do NTP master 1. So router 3 is the master for the NTP configuration, and then exit, and then WR. I think that's pretty much everything we have to do so far. Let's go to router 1 to, actually that was mistaken. That has to be done in router 1. So let me just erase it from router 3. I thought it was router 3, but we have to remove it there. Config T, no NTP master 1, and WR. So we have to be very careful because we can make those mistakes in the exam day, and we have to be very, very smart and careful so we don't make those mistakes. We can fail the lab because of that. Okay, after doing the config T, we have NTP master 1 and WR. Now in router 3, we have to configure the SSH service, so we have to go back to router 3. The following SSH user is root, and the password is secret with a 3. So let's go with the instructions. There, first thing we do is configure the domain, IP domain, then name cisco.com. We have line BTY 04. Transport input SSH. We have to make sure we are configuring the correct option, transport input SSH. Then login local. Be careful to do that. Okay. And what else do we need to do? Okay, username, root, and password secret with the number 3. We do an exit here. And then we have to do, actually, we have to do the config T. Before do we do the exit, we have to do, remember this one, username, root, password, secret. We have to do the crypto here. Crypto key generate RSA 1024. Let's validate that. They didn't specify, but let's use 1024 because it's more secure for the bits of the key, authentication key here. And let's do exit and WR. Now there's a way to validate that we are able to that we have successfully configured the last part of the SSH services. I don't see it here, but I saw it here in the other guide. So if we go to router 1, let's hope it works. We have to type the following: SSH -L root 10.1.3.11. Okay, now we need to remember that password. It was secret with the number 3. So there you go. Since there is no enable, we need to go and configure the enable password for router 3 so we can have a little bit of more access. Enable secret CCNA for now, WR. This is out of the scope of this lab, but I'm doing it just to validate. Show IP interface brief. There you go. We have in router 1, we are able to access router 3 successfully via SSH. That means we configure good the SSH service, and we should be all set with this lab. So I think pretty much it's an easy lab, but we need to keep on practicing as much as we can so it becomes an easy way. When we have this in the exam, it will not become difficult, but it will be very easy for us. It's been a pleasure, boys and girls. Take care and remember to practice as much as you can before exam day. There is a little bit different. This one is actually the same one, but the only difference here is that we are using Ethernet here, but in the Packet Tracer lab, we are using Gigabit instead of Ethernet, but that's pretty much the same lab that we have there. So I see you around. This is the name of the lab that I will be sharing with you.